Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's MTPredictor video, I would like to follow up on a trade setup that was brought to us by one of our customers, Michelle, in our MTPredictor training for MTPredictor customers that we did on Tuesday. But before we start, I'd like to have a look at our risk disclaimer as usual. I'd like to remind you that all examples in these videos should be considered as hypothetical. They were not trades that were actually taken in a live account. They're just shown for illustration and training purposes only. Also remind you all there's risk of loss in trading and investing. All trade decisions are your own sole responsibility. As professional traders, we all know that losses can and will and do happen. I'll just remind you of that again. Losses can and will and do happen when you're trading. But let's now go to a chart. This is the analysis that we did in our training room on Tuesday, and it was about this TS1 sell setup here that Michelle found in her own trading and basically wanted us to have a look at. So I'll just start again and go through this because this was a lovely Holy Grail trade setup that we had a look at the time. So I'm just going to clear everything off and just remind you of what a Holy Grail trade setup is. A Holy Grail trade setup is where we have a market make a high or low at a higher time frame support or resistance. Now this is a resistance on a daily chart. This particular TS1 setup is on our 1 hour or 60-minute chart. So I'm just going to go out to the daily chart and just show you where we got this from. Just bear with us for a second as it just loads the daily chart. Right, here's the daily chart, and as you can see we had some DP support and resistance levels on our chart here. I'll just take these off and just show you how Crude has been doing over the last few weeks. We've been following this pretty much every training webinar we've been doing each Tuesday. This is actually the January contract now. So before we had a DP off this pivot high. Remember, we just go over the pivot high, right mouse click and do DP. This then gave us a resistance level up here. We also had a VS or volume spike sell setup at that level. If I right mouse click, do the analysis on that, you can see the market came to our first target there. We're on this daily chart. Obviously we're a very big contract, so daily trades are for big traders only. But the market went down to this particular level, the target level here, for a nice 6-hour profit. But I just want to take that off because I'm not looking at that. What I'm looking at, but I'll just start again, is our DP there that caught the high as the market was declining down before the market even got here. That's the important point. Before the market even got down here, I placed a DP off this level and said that this was an area of potential support. So if I do the training mode, when the market was about here, I said this was a potential area of support. And as we can see, the market went down very nicely to this level, put a low in, started to come up. As it started to come up here, I then said the next resistance area was off the last pivot high, which was here, and said this was a potential resistance level. If I turn training mode off, you can see the market went right up to this level where we actually had a high unfold. And actually in between this, on the rally up, we also looked at on the 4-hourly chart. There's the analysis as well that I had on my chart from the 4-hourly chart. We had our major daily support come in here, an initial rally up here, an initial correction down here for another Holy Grail trade setup. The target on this would be the typical wave 3 WPT, and that's exactly what the market did. Went right up to that level where a potential 12-hour profit was available. So that was something we looked at in our training webinar as well a week or so ago. But the trade setup we looked at on last Tuesday, and this is the one I particularly want to follow up on, is because it was brought up by one of our customers at the time. So I'll just wait for a second while this chart loads. And here it is. I'll just take all the analysis off. So there was our higher time frame resistance we placed on the chart there in advance, the daily resistance. So what happens with this TS1 sell setup? And why was I looking at this for a potential Holy Grail trade setup? And what is a Holy Grail trade setup? Well, because I use my unique isolation approach to Elliott wave, what we do is we start our count when the market makes sense. In other words, it's a clear picture. In this case, where it came in at higher time frame resistance. So here the hourly chart, the 1 hourly chart, came in at higher time frame daily resistance. We had the initial decline down, so the initial move off an important high, which in this case was here, would be considered a wave 1. We then had an initial correction. The initial correction after the initial move would be considered a wave 2. This should subdivide into an ABC. If this does an ABC correction here, then if it's a wave 2, then the most likely target after that is a wave 3. So that's why when we place the analysis on here, if I right mouse click and do analysis, we're not looking to go to our minimum wave CWPT. Grab this and drag it and come down here to our typical wave 3 WPT, because that's where we're anticipating the market's going to go. And as you can see, it's just reached this morning. Remember, we were actually talking about this live a couple of days ago when the market was in and around here before it even got down to the typical wave 3 WPT, and doing this very same analysis live in our training webinar before the market even got there. And this is the result, a profit of approximately 12R, or 12 times the initial risk. This is why I've given this trade setup the nickname Holy Grail, not because it has a high percentage of winners, it doesn't, but what happens when the winners come through is the winners are large in relation to the initial risk. In other words, we're looking to trade a strong wave 3, which is normally the strongest and longest in a completed 5-wave sequence, getting in right at the end of the wave 2 or right at the start of the wave 3 for the smallest initial risk for the largest profit potential. Remember, we use correct position sizing. In this case, risking less than 2% of a sample $20,000 account. That means we'll be going short 1 contract. So the initial risk is kept small, and when the profits come through, they're large, very large. And in fact, this profit was approximately 12 times greater than the initial risk. This is why I've nicknamed this the Holy Grail trade setup, because when the profits come through, they're large in relation to the initial risk. This was one of the main trade setups that I designed MTPredictor for, basically back in 2001. So what's that? Over 15 years ago. This was why MTPredictor was developed in the first place, to be able to uncover these trades off the end of a wave 2 to catch the start of a wave 3 to then get the big moves to keep your initial risk small. So what do I mean by that? I mean that when the losses come through, and they will, as I said right at the start, losses can and will and do happen. Every professional trader knows and understands that. But when the losses come through, they are small, and when the profits come through, if we get to the typical wave 3 WPT, as you see we have here on crude, the profits are large. And that's why I think it's the best trade setup in the book, because it's a trade setup that hasn't got a high percentage of winners, but the winners are much, much larger than the losses. And that is a good way to help your trading account move forward. Put lots of money in, take a little bit out, lots of money in, a little bit out. So I just wanted to follow up with this in this particular video, because this was not a trade setup that I followed myself, but we were talking about it in our Tuesday training webinar for customers only, and one of our customers, Michelle, was looking at this particular trade setup herself and asked us to analyze it and see what the setup was like and what the trade management would be. So I highlighted this and said a potential Holy Grail trade setup, because crude was coming off this daily resistance area here, initial decline down, initial correction, subdivides into an ABC, potentially a wave 2, therefore our target would be the typical wave 3 WPT. And as you can see, it's unfolded absolutely perfectly. So very well done, Michelle, there. A very nice trade setup you found yourself there, so well done. And a good example of what our MTPredictor customers are finding themselves, and a good example of the trade setups that MTPredictor is designed to uncover.